I'm Leyla Bilali. I am a fertility nurse of over a decade now. I am the co-founder of Dandi Fertility, a holistic fertility brand, trying to, bridge the gap between the medical care that our fertility patients receive and all of the, details and personalization that many patients find are missing in their medical care. I'm here today with Tara Lipinski, who is a fertility warrior herself. And we're going to talk through our own fertility journeys and especially with the holidays coming up, what kind of things we've experienced going through the holidays while in the thick of our fertility journeys. So, Tara, thank you so much for being here and for taking the time and for letting us into such an intimate space.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. For those of you that don't know, I went on a long fertility journey myself. But before infertility advocate sort of got added to my resume, I was an Olympic elite figure skater. I won the Olympics in 1998 when I was just 15 years old. And now I work for NBC as a broadcaster and analyst.
I remember that Olympics very well. We were cheering for you. My
Oh,
mom and I are
thanks.
big figure skating fans, so I definitely remember that. Um, it's kind of ironic for me personally. I've been doing this for such a long time, and I never really thought I'd be on the other side of it as a fertility patient. And I've had a lot of late miscarriages and kind of unexplained infertility at this point. So it's definitely strange for me to be on the other side, but on the same token, it's been really good as a practitioner because now that I've physically been through it all, it's really made me a better clinician, in my opinion. And when I tell my patients, I know how you feel, I actually mean that now. So while it's been really, really taxing emotionally, it's made me a much, much better nurse. And so it's given me a completely different lens into this world. And, you know, during the holidays, especially, there's so many people that you have to navigate. And a lot of our relatives or friends, they all mean well, right? They're all asking you these questions coming from a good place. Nobody is thinking in the back of their mind that you're going through a fertility journey or that you're having trouble conceiving. So they mean it from a good place, but it is really hard in a setting full of people, especially to answer questions like that. So, when you're around your family or friends during the holidays, do you have any tips for our community? How did you navigate it when you were going through it during a holiday season?
It took me a long time to really figure it out. And I think my first gut reaction when I started being in places that made me feel sad or, made me, really dive so deep into thinking that sort of overthinking hamster wheel when you want to shut off your brain, you want to go enjoy yourself socially. I found myself it having the opposite effect sometimes. And things that were said or things that were happening made me overthink. So I think eventually I isolated, which is not the greatest sort of solution. And then I had to recalibrate because I was like, okay, I can't just stick myself on my couch for the rest of my life and just tune out everything. But I think the greatest advice I have is sometimes it's okay to do that if that's really just what you need to get through because it is hard the day-to-day sort of scheduling of IVF and transfers and retrievals. Sometimes it's okay to just say I need to shut off from everyone. I need to just be in my little hole with my husband or my parents or whoever is makes me feel safest. Like that's okay to do. And I think sometimes it's not great long term. I'm not saying, oh, go isolate
Right.
yourself forever. But I think sometimes following just what feels like good to you and what your gut instinct is. But I think, also then I had to recalibrate because that was just going to be, no life if I just did that because our journey is years and years long. So then I just became more open and more confident in telling my close friends and family Like this is just how I'm processing things. And sometimes when I am trying to step away from, thinking about our current, status with our IVF or pregnancy journey, like I just would rather, you know, don't ask me any questions about it. Don't bring it up. Let's just have a night where we're not talking about anything to do with IVF, because just asking me how the appointment went, most likely it didn't go well. And I don't want to have to go through it again and
Right.
worry again, and also think about how people are probably pitying me or doubting us or whatever it is. You just feel like it's sometimes hard to truly explain what you feel when you're walking through this journey. So I just became very open and told people, oh, like it's better if you don't, inquire about exactly how an appointment went. And like what really works for my mental health is if you're able to say, like, oh, like, I'm here for you. Let me know what you need. If you want just a movie night where we don't talk about anything, if you want to dive in on every detail, let me know. Like, I can do either of those things. You let me know what you need today. Or just, check ins. I would tell people, like, it really is still nice to get check ins. Um,
Right.
but I sometimes, if you feel me backing away from certain things, it's just because I'm fearful, or I don't, it's really hard to talk about those things.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, a couple of things you touched on. For me, it was really hard to process because this is what I do for a living. So I couldn't separate. I couldn't go into that hole. It was either I just stopped working or, and for me, those 2 years of back-to-back miscarriages, it was like I couldn't even give myself the space and the separation to heal because this is what I do all day, every day. And I love what I do, but I did now looking back, I realize why it was even harder is because I couldn't separate. And sometimes you do. Sometimes you do need to go into that hole and grieve it and process it and then come back.
Yeah.
Um, and also when you know the IVF process, so people in my family who have gone through IVF, because I know the timeline so specifically and I know all the testing, I always actually preface it with, I know that you know that I know your timeline and what day your tests are on and everything. And I'm not going to ask you, not because I don't care, but it's up to you. If you want to share it with me, by all means. But
Yeah.
sometimes I do tell my patients as, protection for themselves. And like, just don't tell anybody unless it is somebody that you feel very safe with. Just don't tell them what day you're having your transfer or anything like that. Because if they are at all familiar with the process and they know if you had your transfer on this day, then your pregnancy test is going to be on this day, or your first scan is going to be on this day, the heartbeat scan is going to be on this day. So I do sometimes tell my patients if they want to just say, this is what we're going through, but not give specifics or, dates of the actual procedures or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I think you just have to sort of really be selfish in some of these moments, because it's a lot. It's physically, financially, emotionally, mentally, it's draining in every way. And sometimes you have to be a little selfish of thinking what you need to just get through. What are you, when you look at this next 3 weeks of a cycle, to get to those appointments, to deal with the ups and downs and the bad news and the good news and the hope, and then the loss of hope, what do you need? And then you can just sort of, obviously, the people that love you, your family, your friends, your partner, if you're able just to be really honest and say, this is what I think I need during this time. I may not, like you said, I may not tell you exactly, what day I'm going in for the transfer, but I may need a movie night and I don't want to talk about it, or I may need this. And I think, anyone who loves you will have empathy for what you're going through, and will know how to be there for you, because I think everyone has good intentions. Everyone is trying to be there for you. And I think that's where I really learned. I wish I was almost more honest in the beginning, because I feel like everyone really tried to step up and be there. But unless you're personally going through the exact same journey, it's really hard to know how to show up for someone in this world, and it doesn't always go so perfectly. And I think instead, in the beginning, I just sort of shut down and isolated, and wasn't confident enough to voice like, hey, this is really hard, and I'm so grateful that you're able to, I'm so grateful that you're in my life. I'm so grateful that you're wanting to support me, but let me just let you know, like, this really helps me when you ask about this or say this, and if we could avoid these other topics or sort of conversations, it really helps me, because if not, it makes me feel a certain way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that to your point of unless you've been through it yourself, like I remember when I would talk to a patient who was having a loss at any stage, early or late, doesn't matter. I remember the things that I would say to them, and it just doesn't even come remotely close to how they were feeling. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't understand the gravity of it. So until and unless you've actually been through it, it is very, very hard to to feel that and to know the exact things to say or do.
I think I've learned that too, like through all different stages of infertility and loss, and IVF failure. Even if you've gone through it, you have to also think that each journey is different. So I really think about that when people are messaging me or I'm hearing other stories. It's really in the forefront of my mind now to know I have gone on my journey. I haven't gone on what she's going on right now. So I need to really think about all of those domino effects of what I say to this person. Because I think a lot of people, even if they've experienced a miscarriage, even maybe they didn't do IVF but they had a miscarriage, maybe they did one round of IVF and it failed but then the next one worked, like everyone has a different story, and your story is so unique, and your trigger points and pain points are so unique that you can't just expect to think what someone else is going through. And yes, there's those few people that I'm like, oh my goodness, we've gone through the same thing, we've gone through multiple, you
Yes.
know like IVF failures at this point and these type of losses and this
Right.
type of and you connect and you bond with these people. You're like, this is my soul person, soul sister, because
Yeah.
we, we feel the same things because we've gone through an exact same journey. But there's so many journeys that are a little different. So I think that's good advice for anyone out there trying to support someone, and I think that's also good advice for myself. Just everyone's journey is different, and and the outcomes are always slightly different. So it's hard. You really have to think before you speak, because if you haven't been there, you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you say the soul sister thing because I've had some patients who make some of their closest friends in the waiting room of our clinic. They become friends with someone who is going through the exact same thing as them, and they keep in touch and they become really good friends. It's really, really sweet.
It's like an instant connection. It's
Yeah.
instantaneous, like bond.
Yeah, and honestly, I would say my patients who had been with me for a long time, or if they were like repeat patients, they come in for a second child, third child, whatever. They were my biggest support system because they actually did know exactly what it felt like. So they were a really, really good support system for me. In terms of self-care habits, what would you say are some good things that people can pause and do, especially during a busy, socially, crazy holiday season? What would you say are some go-to self-care habits?
I mean, I truly think getting your mind off of it for a little bit, which is really hard to do because it consumes every thought usually.
Yeah.
But when you do set aside some time to just, have a dinner with your partner, to just run a bath and say, I'm going to try to focus on something else. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to watch a show. Um, just anything that could really sort of give you the opportunity to disconnect, and to I think sometimes that helps the fear cycle that so many of us are on, and the unanswered questions that there's not an answer that someone can give us for some of these things that happen, and the failures that happen in this world. And I think that's hard for a human to process. So when you're constantly trying to figure it out, you lose mental steam. So I think to get through, it's not it's not a sprint, it's a marathon when it comes to a lot of these journeys. So to get through that, you do need to take your self-care really, you need to make sure that you're giving yourself that time to recoup and regenerate.
Absolutely, yeah. And another, big part of the holidays is the food and the drinks. And so I know that a lot of my patients do different diets or a modified diet. They kind of adjust their diet going through the fertility journey. Did you adjust anything at all, like food, drink? Because I imagine one of the other questions that people will ask, like if you're not drinking, even though you might not be drinking, let's say you're doing an anti-inflammatory diet during your fertility journey, or your doctor just advises during, the period of your transfer, don't drink. We're just going to assume that you're pregnant. And then the questions that come with that, oh, you're not drinking. Like, does that mean you're pregnant? Again, well-meaning people, but they ask these questions that totally put you on the spot. Did you have to deal with any of that during holiday seasons
And
or?
I think there's always the question of why aren't you drinking? Or, I definitely went through, I went through 8 retrievals and 6 transfers. So the months that those took up in preparation, just counted up, it's probably years of my life. So, there were times where I was on like no drink, no, obviously no alcohol, and trying to eat as clean as I could. And it was really hard because it's the holidays and you want to have fun and you want to just let go. And you keep thinking like, oh, if that last one worked, I would have like been here at this point. And you're looking at the calendar of all the like missed opportunities. And again, it just sucks the fun out of things sometimes. So, that's what infertility does. And I think that, getting the questions on top of that is just always the extra layer, that you just like are reminded of. But I think that there were times too, though, that I didn't. I did have the glass of wine and I did eat anything I wanted. And I think that's also something to talk about because I think a lot of people, even though I did it, I probably felt so guilty about it in the moment because I was like, oh, I should be not doing that. But at a certain point, you just got to follow your gut and what works for you. And I think we put so much pressure on ourselves that, we're in control of these outcomes. And we don't want to ruin a transfer. We don't want to ruin a egg retrieval. And I think after 8 egg retrievals, I sort of got to the point where I was putting less and less pressure on myself, and still trying to live life a little bit.
Yeah, no, as you should. I sometimes also just do, I'll get like a seltzer or something that looks like a drink and I'll ask them to put it in a fancy glass too so that it looks
Yeah,
like I'm drinking so that people just don't even bother
don't even
asking.
bother. Yeah, that is a good. I did that. That's a good one.
Um, what advice do you have for people who have been on this journey maybe for a long time? And I feel like a lot of New Year's resolutions revolve around this stuff. And, I hope that 2026 is my year to have a baby or a rainbow baby or a second baby, whatever it may be. What advice do you have for people going into the new year, in that spirit?
I got to the point, and this is again personal, right? It's like whatever works for your unique journey. At this age, I'm just like, whatever, everyone just wants to be happy out there. So whatever works for you, just do it and do it
Right.
with no regrets. Like, block out all the noise. For me, I definitely put down the calendar because that was something I did constantly in the beginning was just the dates and the possible due dates and the possible dates that we get good news from a cycle. And I can't even count how many times that just fell through. So for me it was much easy it's much easier to try to have some self-control and not be looking at the calendar, because when it doesn't work, sometimes it's just like another
It's a
little
reminder, yeah.
reminder, and try to stay as present in the current steps that I'm in, and make smaller goals for myself instead of the big 2026 Christmas is when I'm gonna finally have all these memories and going into detail. And when all of a sudden that just doesn't happen, it's just really hard.
Yeah.
Because I did that constantly. I mean, there's so many Christmases. Um, we recently just had some other, I'll eventually share, but this Christmas is not what I thought it was either, so it's just like it constantly happens. And for me, it's sometimes a little bit easier to stay as present in the small goals,
Yeah.
and feel like I'm achieving the small goals that are attainable because they're right around the corner, instead of like really getting lost in imagining what something's going to look like a year from now.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I tell that to my patients a lot too. I kind of tell them to anticipate letting go of their timeline, right? We all have this timeline that we go by in life. And I managing expectations is one of the biggest things I do as a fertility nurse. And that's one of the biggest things is putting aside your timeline. I know it's like what you've had set in your mind for so long, but that it just it backfires. And to your point of having all the reminders, like I even do that sometimes where I'll catch myself remembering due dates, like, oh, like this would have been my due
I
date.
know. I remember all the due dates. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so the dates themselves can be, really
Helpful.
triggering. So I agree, kind of just put that timeline aside and one step at a time. And then the last thing, the best part of the holidays, gifting and receiving. In the spirit of the gifting season, are there any products in the fertility space that you really loved or that you'd really recommend?
I mean, that's why I love working with you guys in the community sort of section of Dandy. And not only because I think it's incredible um to connect with more people going through infertility and IVF and loss, and giving any support that I can, but just
Yeah,
creating that community because that's what helps us all feel less isolated.
yeah,
So I love my role there. But on the flip side of what they do with all of the product, I think it's just so beautiful. And it is back to that self care of being able to give yourself, a little moment that you're taking care of yourself in this moment, because it's so hard. You're trying to create life here, and it's a difficult process, and you're working so hard that it's nice to have those moments that feel like you're taking care of yourself. And I think that's what the Dandy products do, where it's like, oh yeah, these shots aren't fun. Let's make them a little more, bearable. And I think that, finally having someone think about that is really nice for the people going through it.
yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly, we wanted to build something that kind of was more catered to the fertility patient, not a bunch of products made for other things that fertility patients had to piece together. So, thank you so much for sharing with us. Like I said, it's a very intimate space, so we appreciate you being so open. And we appreciate you and we wish you well on your fertility journey.
Aw, thank you so much.